Quite a nice, calm, pleasant little PMQs there. Peter Cardwell is with me. It looks like James Cartlidge got under David Lammy's skin there.
100%. Lammy lost the run of himself at the end there. He was really, really annoyed. He made a number of references to the fact he wasn't up against Robert Jenrick, the Shadow Justice Secretary, as he thought he was going to be. He said in 25 years he'd never had such a bad spectacle. And all James Cartlidge did over most of his questions, over 6 questions, was A, ask for an apology, which hasn't been delivered to the family of the 14-year-old girl who was sexually assaulted by Hadush Kebatu. And secondly, asking, are there any asylum-seeking migrants who are in prison who've been released by mistake? We know that in a year, under Labour's watch, 262 people have been released. So this was calm, it was measured, it was controlled from James Cartlidge. Someone who wasn't calm, someone who wasn't measured, someone who wasn't controlled, and someone who wasn't wearing a poppy was David Lammy.
Yeah, one of our callers, Jason in Lincoln. Calamity Lammy currently answering PMQs, the only one not wearing a poppy. But what was David Lammy's answer there? Is it that he didn't know?
He doesn't know.
Or is it that he knows and he doesn't want to say?
No, he doesn't know the answer. He doesn't have it in front of him. And actually, when you're preparing for things like these kind of question and answer sessions, which I prepared ministers for when I was a special advisor, you've always got to think, what are the worst questions that can be asked? What are the hostile questions that can be asked? And clearly, Hadush Kebatu, big justice issue, massive issue for the prison service, huge screw up for the prison service. Clearly, a follow-up from James Cartlidge was very likely. James Cartlidge, former Justice Minister himself.
Repeatedly followed up.
Exactly.
I mean, is there an argument also that David Lammy doesn't know, and also he doesn't want to say, no, it hasn't happened, because there's also a very high chance that it has?
Yes, there is a high chance that it has.
And he doesn't want to get caught out.
Exactly, and there's one of these people released almost every day. So the question he will then be going to his officials and saying is, why didn't I have that in my briefing pack? Why wasn't I prepared for that question? He's clearly very angry, and interestingly, he talked about the fact that he put up with 14 years of the Conservatives. He said he'd been in the House for 25 years, and really, as time went on, David Lammy just got more and more annoyed. I thought he lost control there, as he sometimes does. He got very angry towards the end, whereas James Cartlidge, cool as a cucumber.
We've got Paul Richards on the line, former Labour Party Special Advisor. Hi, Paul. That was a very ill-tempered PMQs by any standards.
Well, hello to you both. I think it was the B team being put in, wasn't it? It wasn't a vintage performance. I disagree with Peter's analysis a little bit. I think that it was a poor performance on both sides, actually, to be absolutely honest. And I'm pretty astonished that James Cartlidge used up all of his questions on this one issue, because the Rachel Reeves statements yesterday on tax rises, you might have thought that would be a stronger area for the Tories to go in on, or even the result from New York overnight in the mayoral election, or even the unfolding tragedy in Sudan. There were sort of some very hot button issues going on in the world, and yet he used all of his questions on this one topic, which I think Lammy just sort of went, well, it's your fault. You were a justice minister when these people started being let out, and it meant that it was a bit of a score draw, I would say.
Paul, do you feel that the public get frustrated when they see this, that they see questions being wasted, or do you feel that Lammy should have been held to account? If you're not going to answer a question, it is a bit of a standard procedure to keep asking it until they do.
Well, I think the problem is that it is one of those questions you can't answer, because presumably, in logic, the answer must be yes, there are other cases. I don't know, but that's just the logic of the
So
numbers.
Why didn't he say that?
But he can't say that out loud, because that becomes a big government announcement, and therefore, the Tories have won. So he obfuscates the answer. Then he has to say at the end, well, I've answered the question, when he plainly hasn't. And of course that means that the public are frustrated, because there are so many other issues they probably would like to know the answers to as well. And I mean, I've never liked the gladiatorial style of Prime Minister's questions. It's not very illuminating, and it doesn't show our Parliament. So much of the work of our Parliament is deliberative and collaborative, and this is obviously a clash, which I think makes us all look pretty bad. But I think to use up all 6 on one topic when there are so many other issues in the world.
Peter's shaking his head. I want to come back to Peter on that.
But it won't be the first time we've disagreed.
Well, and it won't be the last. It won't be the last, Paul. But yes, and good to see you wearing a poppy, unlike David Lammy. Paul actually was selling poppies the last time I saw him at Victoria Station, bumped into him, which is great volunteering from Paul. But no, he's wrong. He's wrong because David Lammy was absolutely right to be questioned on these two issues. And it's two really basic things that go to the heart of his competence as Justice Secretary. Have you apologised to the family of the victim of Hadush Kebatu? Well, no, he's done it on the floor of the House. Have you? That didn't happen last week. Has it happened since then? Well, no, it hasn't. He said he's now apologising on the floor of the House. Pick up the phone, man. It's dead easy. Just get in touch with that family. Secondly,
why is that not happening, do you think?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's a really basic thing to do. Now, politicians need to sort of actively say to officials, I want to do this. It's not something officials, I used to work in the Ministry of Justice, it's not something they will come to you to say, and they don't like really politicians speaking to victims directly because there is a process. But if I were David Lammy, this is so clear. You're up at PMQs, it's such a clear thing to do. And I mean, the thought that he's going to ask about Mandami and New York, like that's irrelevant to British politics, I would argue at this point anyway, certainly irrelevant to PMQs. And also Rachel Reeves did so much damage to herself yesterday that I don't think the Conservatives even needed to ask about that. And all you're going to get from David Lammy if you ask about Rachel Reeves is, well, wait until the budget, we can't speculate. So he knows he's going to get those kind of answers. So this is actually something that James Cartlidge went for. Paul says, erroneously, I think, that everybody looked bad. I actually think James Cartlidge, in his quite controlled, gentlemanly, almost old school way, just being persistent, actually won for the Tories today. I wasn't expecting him to. James Cartlidge isn't a brilliant Commons performer, but actually in contrast to Lammy, who really lost his temper there, I think James Cartlidge comes out of it very well.
Paul, in your former role, would you advise David Lammy to be human, if you like, and pick up the phone to the girl's family?
I mean, I probably would. I think empathy goes an awful long way in politics, and it is about those relationships. Just to point on what Peter said there, though, this is not justice questions. You know, this is Prime Minister's questions, and both are deputising for their leaders, for the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition. So to go just purely on justice, I think, was a mistake.
But Cartlidge could have gone on defence, though. He could, by that lot, he could have gone on defence. He could have gone on anything. It's not just if he was a shadow Justice Secretary and went on justice, I would agree with you, Paul. But as a shadow Defence Secretary, he could have gone on anything.
Well, he should have done. That's my point. He should have ranged across a range of topics.
Why?
Because those are the things that the public want to know. And to bang on about the same issue when you're not going to get an answer, I think it was a waste of his opportunity. I don't suppose he's going to get asked to do this again, actually.
We should note David Lammy has just put on a poppy, actually, so it was obviously a mistake.
Well, of course it was a mistake. I imagine it must have fallen off on his way to sit down. I mean, he's not a deliberate snub, is it? It's just something that he should have done. Mind you, that's the sort of thing that there's a parliamentary private secretary sitting right behind him, whose job it is to make sure he's got a poppy on. So but
again, it goes back to the absolute basics here. The absolute basics of, have you apologised to the victim's family and potentially to the victim? Do you know what's going on in your department? Do you know what's going on in the prison service, and have they released any others, and how many have been released since Hadush Kebatu? And are you wearing a poppy? I mean, those three things are all three really basic things that should have happened today to David Lammy, but yet again he failed.
Paul, final word.
Well, I think he could have been better briefed. I think the poppy thing is obviously just a mistake. It must have fallen off. But I don't think he lost his temper. He's a passionate man. He needs to cross his brief. Absolutely not.
No, he did look to me like he was rattled. Let's put it that way. Let's call it that. Okay, Peter Cardwell, thank you very much, and big thank you to Paul Richards too.